My academic story is one of walking by faith and taking it a day at a time. As a college student, God gave me the scripture. It's been my favorite scripture, 1 Thessalonians 5:24. Faithful is he that calls you, who also will do it. I've always believed that if it's something God's called me to do, he will make a way to get it done. Over 40 years ago, my dad said, I think being a teacher is a really great job for a woman. You get to have the holidays and vacations off with your children. I wasn't exactly warm to the idea of choosing a career based because it was a great job for a woman, but since he was paying the bills, I decided to obey. Fast forward to 20 years, and I took a job teaching middle school in California. When I began to investigate what it would take for me to get a teaching credential, I discovered that I already had a Missouri teaching credential. And my credential was a lifetime credential. My teaching credential does not expire. Thank you, Dad. 5 years later, I took a position at a California charter school, and I felt impressed that I should go ahead and complete my master's degree, even though it wasn't required. 1 month after I finished my master's degree that I didn't need, a brand new position was created at the school I worked for. The position, which required a master's in education, didn't even exist when I started my master's program. God made a way, and I was hired to be an administrator at that school with more money, more freedom, and lots of leadership opportunities. After moving to Miami, I was given the opportunity to work at Trinity Church and restart the elementary school. Over the next few years, I kept feeling a nudge that it was time to start working on my doctorate. In the spring of 2013, I attended my nephew's graduation at Southeastern University. As we waited for the ceremony to begin, an advertisement came up on the screen. A brand new doctoral program was being created to begin in the summer of 2014. As soon as I saw it, I just knew that God wanted me to complete that degree. Well, life was very busy, and the application kept getting pushed back on my to-do list. In the spring of 2014, Pastor Rich was at SEU taking a class, and he had a medical emergency. We raced to the hospital and learned that Pastor Rich was fine, but the doctors wanted to observe him for a few days. Since we were all just basically sitting around looking at each other, I decided to visit the university and pop in on the education department. School was not in session, so most of the professors were gone. I walked into the office and just sort of wandered around, and I saw the lights on in one of the offices. I knocked on the door and discovered that I was speaking to the head of the entire doctoral program. She told me that I was very late to apply, but she had one spot left in the first cohort, and if I could get my application in within the next 3 days, she would submit it for consideration. Pastor Rich's medical emergency was really God's way of getting me to Lakeland. I started the doctoral program 2 months later in the very first cohort of students. In the fall of 2017, I completed my comprehensive exams and began work on my dissertation. Little did I know that this was also the beginning of 4 of the hardest years of my life. If it was not for the ongoing assurance that God was directing my steps, I would never have finished my degree. In October of 2017, my mom was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome. She went from an active, independent senior to being completely paralyzed overnight. Hospital vigils are not the place to try and research and write a dissertation. I kept carting my books back and forth, but getting absolutely no work done. Then, just as my mom was gaining back some of her mobility, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 metastasized lung cancer. He fought hard, but in October 2018, he lost the battle. I was emotionally paralyzed. I tried to think about studying and writing, but I couldn't focus. I just kept enrolling and paying my tuition each semester, but I was making zero progress. A year later, in October 2019, I finally mustered up the capacity to begin again on my dissertation. It was basically starting over, but I was working. Then 2020 hit. As the leader of our school, it was my job to make sure the teachers and staff had everything they needed to be successful in the upheaval of a pandemic with school closures and virtual learning. On top of that, I was told that I had reached the maximum time limit for my doctorate. If I didn't finish in the summer of 2020, I would have to start the entire doctorate from the beginning. I knew that God had called me to complete my doctorate, and I wasn't going to let anything deter me. Within 3 months, I completed what should have taken at least a year. God gave me the strength and the focus to pursue what I knew He had called me to do. I finished my dissertation during the summer of 2020 and passed my oral exams. I still don't know the full impact of why God challenged me to complete this goal. I do know that I don't want to wake up someday and discover that I have only been using a small part of myself. As the author George Eliot wrote, it's never too late to be what you might have been. And John Maxwell wrote, if you don't try to create the future you want, you must endure the future you get. If you've been waiting for the perfect time to start your future, please remember that nobody ever got ready by waiting. You only get ready by starting.